Rootkit. A rootkit is a kit of software that gives you root access, super user rights, or even full admin access with the possibility of being hidden and is not easy to uninstall the software. This would give a user full control of a system depending on where it was installed and how it was written. This is typically used for malicious actions. However, it could be used to prevent access to particular files. For example, long time ago when CDs were played in computers, what stopped a user from actually copying or ripping that music to save an illegal copy? A music company made a rootkit to prevent this. When inserted into a computer, the CD installed a piece of software which provided a form of digital rights management, or DRM, by modifying the operating system to interfere with CD copying. This rootkit was found and exploited many security vulnerabilities because of it. Rootkits may be hard to detect because it gives root access, so antivirus and anti-malware may not detect it. Or it actually could detect it, but the rootkit would delete it from that antivirus or anti-malware reporting list. The software installed may look like legit root files and will not stand out as rogue files. So if you're browsing a directory and you're looking at the files, even though you don't know what it is, it's not going to pop out at you. So it's going to actually look and mimic other legit root files. Depending on the level of the rootkit, it can give access to beyond the application layer, such as the core kernel files or even the firmware files on hardware. So detection and removal may be impossible, so only a reinstallation of the OS will remove that rootkit. When firmware rootkits are installed, you may have to replace the hardware itself. Now these rootkit levels, so like I said before, rootkits can be installed to affect the application, OS, and hardware. So here we see the user space is called the application, and the rootkit could actually be installed there to affect a program. Rootkits may also be installed at the operating system level or the kernel space. And then if we're going to affect hardware, then we need to install a rootkit on the firmware space. Now, depending on where this rootkit is installed, like let's say the application, the higher it is on the OSI model, it's easier to write for this rootkit and it's more easy to detect. The further you go down, like to the hardware, the harder it is to write this rootkit and it's harder to detect as well. Now, if we look at this space here, the applications will use something in the operating system core, right? Then the operating system itself is actually going to be used to call down certain resources in hardware. So these three layers, they each use something below it. And of course, hardware is at the very bottom. But if you affect that, you affect everything above it. So that's why it's harder to write and it's harder to detect. And if you affect hardware and you can't delete that rootkit, then you have to replace that hardware. Rootkit payloads may be used for backdoor access. It could also conceal other malware such as keyloggers or even other viruses. It can be used for a zombie attack, or it could be used as a zombie computer to be used in denial of service attacks. It could also be used to enforce DRM, that digital rights management. Now, rootkits may be beneficial for a user, just depends on whatever that rootkit is being used for. So uses may be legal or illegal, but will benefit the owner of the computer. So some software will actually lift that copy protection mechanisms built into DVDs, Blu-ray discs, CDs, things like that. Some laptops will have anti-theft protection BIOS-based rootkit software installed, which will wipe all information if it is reported stolen. So the way that rootkit works is, since it's at the BIOS level, it will always send periodic reports to a central system. And if you report to that central system that your laptop was stolen, once it sends that report, central system will send a message to that laptop and it'll wipe all the information off of it. Now, to mitigate these rootkits, although rootkits are hard to detect, some software companies have developed software to remove these rootkits. Microsoft has Windows Malicious Software Removal Tool, which is able to detect and remove some classes of rootkits. There's third-party companies like Kaspersky, TDSS Killer, which will remove rootkits. And then here's a screenshot of what it looks like. And this is free software, and you just download it, install it, run it, and it should scan your systems for all rootkits that it detects. So to sum things up, we discussed that a rootkit is software that is installed to give a user or an unauthorized user root access to a system. This could affect an application, this could affect the kernel, and this could also affect the firmware. It could be used as self-beneficial or malicious uses. So you could use it for your own use or gain root access to another computer. Ways to mitigate it is to remove with third-party software, reinstall the OS, or maybe even you have to replace the hardware.